Hello, this is my dad, Hector, and today we will ask him some questions. So, the first question is what is your story during that time?
Hi, good evening. Yes, during the FOBAPROA financial crisis, um, I remember that the country started having a very big commercial deficit. That means we imported more than we exported, and money started going out of the country because people didn't have confidence. So they took their pesos and exchanged them into dollars and send them to the United States for safekeeping. But this pressure that the president back then wanted to uh, to solve with foreign investment, it was working okay, but then the foreign investment stopped and the money going out of the country kept going out. So the pressure was enormous for the peso, and at some point the peso lost a lot of value. Okay, so that meant the debts from the banks, they were worth less. So they started to increase interest rates and people couldn't pay their debts.
Okay, the second question is what do you remember the most from those times?
Well, I remember a lot of people lost their houses and their cars and they couldn't pay their debts because the interest rates went up really bad. In our case, my my dad had our house in a mortgage with a bank, but the interest rates went up and he couldn't pay the house. So he was lucky, he was able to sell the house and pay the bank before they took away the house. And with that, they were able to buy a smaller house, but they essentially lost their house.
Do you feel like there has been a worse time in Mexico during your lifetime? If yes, when?
I don't think there has been a worse time after that. I think the economy has been very stable, uh, starting with President Cedillo and then with Fox. The economy became very healthy in financial terms, and there was a lot of stability. The peso didn't lose a lot of value like in times before that. But before this crisis, there were at least two other crises that I can remember that were really bad. One in '82, where the peso lost a lot of value, and it was the same thing. People started to take their money out of the country, and that created the dollar to become very strong, and people lose their jobs, and the banks were actually in such a bad shape that the government took over the banks. They they nationalized the banks. The banks became part of the government.
And when you started working, did the FOBAPROA have any consequences?
I think when I started working in 1995, uh, I was able to get a good job, and I think probably the only consequence is that interest rates were still a little bit high. So it took a while to pay my debt. My biggest debt was with Tec de Monterrey because I had to pay a loan. Uh, but after I was able to pay the loan, I think it was okay. Things started to become much more stable after that.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Overall, there are some lessons that the Mexican government has learned from this crisis. First of all, Banxico did a very bad mistake by trying to set a fixed US currency exchange with the Mexican peso This caused a necessity of um, capital going into the Mexican market, and since there was no trust um, in the Mexican market in general, this caused the imported goods to be much greater than the exports, meaning that the amount of dollars coming in was much less than the dollars coming out, and this caused a capital balance. And also, debt and mortgages set by the private banks were not regulated at all, and most of them didn't have any liquidity other than the houses themselves, and there was very little regulation in the private banking sector. And also, the trust from the foreign market was very low. Thank you.